go on and get started. I told the governor that we're going to start a little late this morning because he let us have too much fun last night.
Barbara did good last night.
Welcome to the Red State Gathering for 2010 in Austin. As for those of you who attended last year know, we don't stand on formality around here. This is a large group of friends who have decided to get together every year, who the Wall Street Journal on Thursday declared winners in the primary election season. Today you will hear from some of the people who are winners because of our efforts, including Nikki Haley from South Carolina, Mike Lee from Utah, and Tom Graves from Georgia, and our first speaker. He doesn't need any more of an introduction than he got last night. He's a phenomenal governor from the only state besides the one I live in that I would ever move to.
Yeah.
God bless Texas, and God bless Rick Perry.
Now, what state do you live in? Georgia. Now, Georgia, hey, Tom, where is Tom? Tom's in here. Oh, hey, Georgia didn't have an income tax, do they? Yes, they do. What? Georgia has a personal income tax? Hey, Eric, come on down to Texas. That will give the legislature in Georgia something to do when they go back in, is to rescind that. Anyway, I was going to say, you obviously have Swedish ancestry, don't you? That's pretty cool. Did they make fun of you being Swedish on some of the blogs, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's what I thought.
My own.
I was thinking that I saw someone take a few shots at you for being Swedish, so never mind. I was going to join them, but Did you all have a great time last night? As Eric said when I came in, he said, we've got a little problem this morning. He said, because you all were such gracious and good hosts last night, he said, our folks are a little slow getting to anyway. So thanks for being here. Seriously, this is a great opportunity for all of us in the right of center universe to get together and share a few things. And Barbara, I dressed up just for you.
Thanks.
Barbara totally busted me this morning when I came in. She went, you know, you clean up pretty good. And I said, well, what was wrong with me last night?
I like it.
And she said, because you spent the whole afternoon hunting and I could tell it. Anyway, it's good to be kept grounded. Normally my wife and my daughter do that for me very well, but thank you, Barbara, for doing it for me.
More than welcome.
Anyway, some of you might be saying that having a red state event in Texas is kind of like bringing ice to Eskimos. But I'm a big believer that the more you do to reinforce conservative values, the better. Austin is a very safe city, but I actually heard that there were some legacy type media people out walking around outside the hotel, so y'all might want to keep an eye on them, because they're kind of blaming y'all for the problems they're having in their industry. Remember back at the turn of the century or thereabout, I think that the buggy whip manufacturers were really mad at that Ford guy. Listen, one thing I truly find remarkable about the conservative blogosphere is that folks like you are using the latest technology and to express the values that I truly believe drove our founding fathers as they shaped this country and created this republic. You know, folks like, I got to think, folks like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison would be real comfortable in this room today.
Amen.
They probably would be grousing about the strength of the hi-fi signal as well. And, you know, Jefferson and Madison would relish or talk about individual liberty. Your efforts to shove government back into the box that they originally created. Incidentally, that box was called the Constitution. That document is more important than ever. Folks in Washington attack it from every angle. It's our primary resource in beating back the efforts to expand their own powers, to fulfill their fantasy of big government as being the answer to every problem that they see. It'd be, you all heard me talk a little bit about this last night, but it'd be kind of tough to pick my favorite amendment from the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment allows me to speak here today, and the Second Amendment gave me an opportunity to have a big old time at the range yesterday. So those of you that were out there at the clay, sporting clays as we refer to them out here, thank you for going. It was fun. But again, the 10th Amendment, day in and day out, is the one that I find, it's where the real battle is. It's where the real battle is in the Beltway, and I think it will continue to be. I don't know if you've read it lately, but the language is so compelling for me of the 10th Amendment. It's so simple in its straightforwardness. The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, or reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. What a beautiful, succinct, simple statement. I believe those words were penned for a time such as this. And the sensible citizens all across this country need to learn the 10th Amendment. Ask why the federal government is apparently ignoring it. Otherwise, the overreach and the excess of the current administration is going to continue unchecked. Our freedoms will continue to be eroded. We need to push back on the flawed idea that government, the federal government, must be the arbiter of every detail, you know, down to the medicines we take, to the light bulbs we use, to how much dust a farm or ranch may produce. Can you imagine having the EPA back in the Dust Bowl days? Turn that dust down. Too much dust. You know, it's an endless struggle that's going on between the right and the left, the conservative and the liberal, between socialism and democracy. And I happen to think it is definitely tilted in the wrong direction at present. Unfortunately, our country is paying a huge price. But fortunately, I believe that the things that are fixing to happen, it's a highly technical Aggie term for about to. The things that are fixing to happen are going to be powerful, and we're fixing to see a swing back in our direction in a big, big way. If we will continue to discuss conservative values,
But you can't just discuss them. You got to live them as well. Republicans didn't lose in '08 because Obama beat them on Facebook. Republicans lost because you couldn't tell the difference between a Republican and a Democrat. All of that free spending, all of that free spending, it put a huge dent in the bank account. Legislating got into people's business. So voters chose what they considered to be the lesser of two evils. And they voted the liberals into office. In November, our party has an unprecedented opportunity to put our country back on track. And I truly believe that that growing mood in our country, I shared, I think last night with you all, I have never seen in my 25 plus years of being engaged in elected public service, I have never seen the power, the passion, the energy in the crowds that we're participating with across this state. And when I looked at Glenn Beck's event in Washington, D.C., and the power of that, and you're seeing that all across this country, it warms the cockles of my heart. And listen, it is a struggle, and it's going to go on every day. The values that we believe in, the values that have shaped this state, and I will tell you, and I think I know I say it with great bias, but I don't think there is an economy anywhere in this country that is any more powerful, any more impactful than in the state of Texas. And it didn't happen by accident. I tell folks, I said, listen, we have led the nation in the creation of jobs through the entire decade of the 2000s. But it has been a hell of a struggle to keep Washington at bay. Working to keep this economy strong. And you've got to trust the citizens to do it. I think that's the big problem for this administration and for this current Congress. I don't think they trust the people. And there's a clear message they don't trust the people. Governing is really not difficult. You don't have to be a PhD from Harvard to understand the principles of governing. Principle number one is do not spend all the money. It's pretty simple. Don't spend all the money. In January of 09, now, those of you that aren't from Texas, our founding fathers were some brilliant people too. I think it was the 1876 Constitution. In Texas, we only let our legislature come into town and meet for 140 days every other year. There were a couple of guys that said, yeah, we ought to let them only meet 2 days every 140 days. Anyway, the fact is, don't spend all the money. It sounds so simplistic, but the fact is, I talked about talking about values, and I said, you have to live those values. Don't spend all the money. In January of 09, our legislature came in here. They saw what had happened the last September of 08 with that big TARP bill, that almost $800 billion that had been used to bail out Wall Street, and then they were greatly concerned about what they had seen. Then they saw the current administration starting to spend stimulus dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars.
there was great consternation, there was great concern here about what Washington and the impact that it was going to have on the entire economy of the world. And in turn, we saw the economy continue to be depressed. Men and women across this country, small businessmen and women, who are the engine that drive the economy, they were afraid to expend dollars. They had no idea what shoe was going to fall next, what regulation are they going to put on us next. We were seeing them talk about a cap and trade legislation that would be devastating to this country from the standpoint of the cost, the job loss, if it was forced upon the people. Then we started talking about a health care bill that we knew was going to cost this country a substantial amount of money, not to mention the loss of access to health care. Our legislature had $8+ billion in a rainy day fund. There was great cries from the left in particular to go spend that money. It's a rainy day, you must go spend that $8 billion to keep government spending at this current certain high level. And our legislature said no. That's for a real rainy day. They saw dark storm clouds on the horizon from what was going on in Washington in the national economy, and they rightly didn't touch that. Don't spend all the money. Second principle of governing is have a tax and a regulatory policy that is fair and predictable. I can't tell you how important it is to have a predictable regulatory climate. Third principle of governing is have a legal system that does not allow for oversuing. We passed the most sweeping tort reform in the nation in 2003 in this state, and it is paying huge dividends. Huge dividends in this state. We gave protections in particular to the medical profession, doctors. We had physicians who were leaving the practice of medicine because they were being sued so often in this state. I can't remember what publication, it may have been the Wall Street Journal, that back in the 90s, Texas was considered to be a legal hellhole, as their words, because of just the freewheeling personal injury trial bar. We referred to it as jackpot justice. I mean, just sue them enough and you may hit the big one. Sue them enough and they'll settle and you can. That was what was happening in the state of Texas, and we passed that. There are 60% more doctors practicing medicine today in Texas than there were 7 years ago. There are 30 counties in this state who have emergency room doctors that did not have them 7 years ago. There are counties, and a lot of these were in the poorer counties along the Rio Grande, that have OBGYNs today when before they had to drive outside of their counties to get that prenatal care. If you had a child with a closed head injury in the Valley of Texas in 2003, you were going to have to transport that child for multiple hours to get him to that type of specialist. And you know what that meant. This wasn't about doctors making more money. This was about access to health care. And the people of the state of Texas understood that, and they processed that. And we put it in a constitutional amendment which codified it in our Constitution and frankly kept us out of the courthouse for probably a decade because it would have been litigated by the personal injury trial bar had we not done that. Have a legal system that doesn't allow for oversuing. As a matter of fact, just this last week, I kind of took the next step. And I think frankly, the last step to making Texas truly a haven for business. And that is the concept of loser pays.
Loser pay is basically an approach to civil litigation, which will basically tell what happens today is the personal injury trial lawyers, they'll sue a bunch of folks. People will do their calculations and go, look, it's going to cost us this much money to go. This is a frivolous suit on its face, but it's going to cost us X numbers of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to the court to defend it. We're going to have to go hire lawyers, do this. You know, they're going to string it out, and it's going to cost us X. Let's offer to settle at this lesser amount just to keep that nuisance case from going forward. And it happens all the time. And it's a cost of doing business, but not with loser pays. With loser pay, you better be sure you got a real case. Give that judge and or the jury the ability to look at that on its face before they get started and say, you know what? This is absolutely frivolous on its face. And you're paying their court costs and their legal fees to date. That would... I told Haley Barber, I don't know, a couple of months ago, I said, Haley, I'm really considering going forward with this concept of loser pays. And of course, Haley's a lawyer, and he understood it that quick, how that would work. He said, Perry, you pass that in Texas, and you can put up a turnstile and charge people to come into your state, because they're going to call it. Fourth principle of governing, have a appropriately funded, accountable public. What that basically says to the businesses that are looking to either expand or to come into your state, you have a skilled workforce developed and ready for it. That's it. Those four principles, put them into place, and then get the hell out of the way, government, and let the private sector do what the private sector best, which is create jobs. It's not difficult to understand. It is difficult to find courageous men and women who will implement those principles. Look, these work in California or Michigan or any other state. You have to have principled men and women. And I've been blessed to be able to work with, I'm going to be a little bit partisan here, so any of my Democrat friends, just take this with a grain of salt. In 2003 was the first time there was Republican leadership in the state of Texas, from top to bottom. You know, there were people who thought, well, in 1995 when George Bush got elected governor, oh, and the Republicans in Texas. Nope. He had a lieutenant governor and a speaker. And I think one of the houses was still Democrat. Good. Also, 1999, when you became the lieutenant governor, Bush was the governor, it was a Republican state. No, because we still had a very partisan Democrat speaker. It was in January of 2003, a short 7 years ago, that the lieutenant governor, David Dewhurst, Tom Craddock, the Republican speaker, myself, both houses for the first time were Republican. That was the first time there was Republican-controlled Texas since Reconstruction back in the 1870s. That was the year that we not only had a substantial budget shortfall, and we filled that shortfall by reducing spending and not raising taxes, passing that tort reform. And I will suggest to you is when we put Texas on the track that it finds itself in today, the state that's created more jobs during the decade of the 2000s, has created more jobs than any other state in the nation this year, and a state that continues to be a model of how you manage government by freeing people of over-regulation and over-taxation and over-litigation, and continue to have a skilled workforce. Listen, Caterpillar closed down 2 engine manufacturing facilities in 2 union-heavy states, I might add. And they made the decision in 2008 that they were going to shut those plants down and they were going to relocate somewhere in the world. And they looked all over and decided the place they wanted to be was in Texas, and they made that announcement that they're opening a manufacturing facility for every Caterpillar engine in the world in Seguin, Texas.
Last month, they made the announcement that they're closing down their hydraulic manufacturing facility in Illinois. That tickles me. It's kind of tickles me. And it's Illinois. And they are moving their hydraulic manufacturing to Victoria, Texas. And listen, they didn't come here. They did their homework. They did not pack up, close down those plants, and go and invest the capital. I mean, the hundreds of millions of dollars of capital to build those two facilities. If they were concerned about, are we going to be able to have the skilled workforce there? Are we going to get sued inappropriately? Are they going to overtax us or overregulate us? They made that decision after looking at all of those and saying, this is the best place in America, the best place in the world to build these plants. California lost their last automobile manufacturing facility last year. It was a combination GM Toyota plant in I think Northern California. They shut that plant down. And the pickup line, the Tacoma, the small Toyota pickup line, was moved to San Antonio, Texas to complement the big Tundra line that was put in there. Today in America, because we are such a mobile society, people are able to pick and choose where they want to live, where they want to do business, where they want to raise their family. I want it to be even more so. And that's the reason the 10th Amendment is so important to me. If we allow a federal government to continue to usurp the Constitution, to continue to take away the freedoms of people by their delegating from Washington, D.C., that this is how you're going to deliver health care, this is how you're going to educate your children, this is how you're going to live your life, we have lost our republic. And we have lost our freedom. This is worth fighting for. This is worth standing up for. This is worth spending the next 45 days working. There is, to me, that's where the rubber meets the road, and I happen to think Washington has us, just about going off in the ditch. And it sure got us up against the guardrail. The economy. I don't apologize to anybody for being a pro-business government. Because the fact, if I went around the room and I said, what's the most important thing that government does? And I'm sure even in this very knowledgeable crowd, we'd hear things like, well, it's making sure we have a good economy, making sure that I live in a safe community, making sure we educate our children, be a host of different things. And all of those are important. But there is nothing more important. There is nothing more important than having an environment where the job creators know that they can risk their capital and have a good chance to have a return on their investment. And the reason that is so important is because you cannot pay a good teacher to be in the classroom. You cannot pay for the officers to be out on the road protecting your life and your limb and your property. You cannot have the transportation infrastructure that you need to have a strong economy unless you first have an environment where entrepreneurs know that they can risk. That it's really that important. And I will suggest to you that anyone that gets up and says that that's not the most important thing that a government and a governor does, you might want to look for an option. Listen, I want to wrap up here, and I apologize, I've kind of gone on a little bit too long, but this isn't,
what we're doing here today isn't some intellectual exercise. This is truly, we are locked in a huge struggle. We are locked in a struggle, I think, to protect our citizens from a very dismal future of centralized government, of rationed opportunity, limited freedom. And as bloggers, you aren't just observers in this struggle. You are the firebrands that rally the people. You are the people who I dare to speak about those that have grown drunk on power in Washington, D.C. You remind your fellow Americans that our system gives them more power than any citizenry in the world. That is what you're all about. As you enjoy this red state summit, keep in mind that some eloquent words from a man that I consider to be the patron saint of conservatism, Ronald Reagan. And he said that freedom is never more than one generation removed from extinction. We didn't pass it on in our children, or to our children in our bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on to them to do the same. We will not be the generation who let freedom slip between our fingers. Instead, let us be remembered as the generation who stood up for what is good about this country, put our nation back on the path established by our founding fathers. And that is a legacy that we all can embrace. So let's restore the basic constitutional values that set this republic apart, spread the gospel of our conservative principles, and get registered every voter that we know is going to vote, right? Get them to the polls in November. God bless you. Thank you all for coming out. Eric Erickson, ladies and gentlemen.
I told the governor better Swedish than Norwegian. He said better that than French. There was, by the way, I went to this little hole-in-the-wall restaurant last night, and they had a little chalkboard in the bathroom where people would write notes, and it said, partisan, what is it? Partisan politicos eat and die. I just scratched out the T and added an extra I and I read Parisian. Governor Berry,